Welcome back to my garage. We've bought some seals. I should explain better. Welcome back to my garage. We're still working on my home-built 50cc two-stroke engine. Experimental, ever-failing engine. And now, this time, hopefully, our rotary valve issues will be solved. So I've gone to a steel valve, and this time it's a thin 0.5mm steel valve, so comparable to what you see in production engines. We've had trouble with friction, and there my my glue joint failed just from clapping the... Okay, the O-ring, we'll need to glue up this O-ring again. I think friction has been our problem, and so now we're gonna run this grooved cover and not this ungrooved cover. And this also has this PTFE low friction surface, which is a little bit worn, but I think we'll be fine. Before we install everything, I'm gonna cut up this divide these long stretches into smaller sections to further reduce friction, less continuous surfaces for like viscous suction to occur. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. Well, actually, the first thing we're gonna do is glue up this O-ring again. I'm not sure if the camera is able to pick this up. Well, actually, you can easily see it here. You can see how much wear there is in that old seal. Like, see the difference between the thickness of the inner lip on those two, the new one on the old seal. The carbon fiber dust has really worn down the seal. Obviously, carbon fiber is abrasive. So new seal. I'm just going to freehand the position of these grooves because it's not critical that they are evenly spaced, and it's probably better if they're not, so that there's no like weird resonance happening. I'm running lots of clearance. That's a good thing. I don't think it's necessary to have a tight clearance on the intake rotary valve, because it's not supposed to seal. It only needs to seal against this surface. The other surface is like, it doesn't have to seal against the engine sucking in fuel. It only has to seal against the engine dumping fuel, or fuel and air mix. Let's hope it starts and runs in a normal fashion now, and we can finally start focusing on actual tuning and development, not just troubleshooting why nothing wants to work. I'm gonna check the temperature of that rotary valve assembly now. It's just extremely hot. Talking 80 degrees Celsius on the rotary valve driver. So why is that? Why is that getting so extremely hot? Seems to work, but it runs but that's concerning. I'm going to turn on the computer so I can see the RPM. We'll just have to run it some and see how it behaves. But it's really strange that the driver gets that hot. Like now everything should be within reason. It's running really rich though. It's running and revving more than ever, but I'm concerned about the heat produced at the rotary valve still. And now there's like no reason for it at all. Like the whole crank feels far too hot. The crankcase, the crank, everything is much hotter than what I would like. Maybe something is misaligned or in a way. Someone commented that ooga-doogaing the crank could have skewed it, and well, maybe that's our problem. It feels really free and nice though, but there's like very little float now. I can't really feel any, and that's concerning. Like the crank should be, well, it's pressed into this bearing, so maybe not, but So yesterday I said screw this shit, and I just went and did other stuff. I can't remember what I said about the subject, but someone in the comment said, do you really think the crank didn't get misaligned from using the impact driver? And I was like, surely not, but well, probably yes. I think that's our problem. I used to not own an impact driver. I used to always think I need an impact driver because I had to, like, there was so much inconvenience because I didn't own one. And now I use it on everything where it can be used. And that's the difference between the old engine I'm always talking about, the rotary valve engine sitting in the land speed bike. There were no impact driver in use there when installing the valve or the drivers and stuff. There's no reason for lots of friction in the rotary valve assembly now because it's a steel valve on aluminium and even Teflon coated aluminium. And I know that works. I'm starting to think this may be the cause of lots of problems during the years. We'll have to disassemble and check the crank. And I think we need to disassemble it without using the impact driver. And then check the crank. And hopefully that crank is out of whack and we can true it up and maybe weld the crank pin for extra rigidity. And then our problems are solved and we can actually start development, not just troubleshooting. To work. When I took the engine off last time, I had to remove the 4 bolts under here, which I can only turn a quarter of a turn at a time. And they're butted up against the engine, and so it takes a lot of time and it's really annoying. But I forgot about this bolt and the other one behind here, which if I take those out, I can just lift the whole thing out and leave this frame in there, which is much easier. I just have to drill a little access hole in the frame on the other side. And yeah. Well, maybe there's not room after all. It's an easy job to take these bolts out now that I have access, and we'll modify this so that I can slide the engine out for next time. I'll meet you back at the table when it's out. Normally I would use the impact driver to get this nut off, but let's not do that this time. Seal has marked the driver a lot. It might be the heat from how hot it's been, but there's about 0.06 millimeters of runout in the rotary valve driver. SKF states that 0.05 millimeters is typically the maximum, but so it's a little bit over. What I'm curious to see is if this runout is from the relationship between the taper it's sitting on and the outer diameter, or if it's the crank itself running not through. 0.007 or something, which is more than I expected, but that's not a lot. And it's really close to the bearing though. Okay, let's take this apart and check the crank properly. At least there's nothing wrong with the piston, and the big end bearing is still alive. There's this black goo in there though. There's always the black goo. I'm being gentle, really gentle. There's so much black stuff everywhere, like obviously from the rotary valve, but there's pretty much nothing here. That's the high spot, like 0.043 millimeters, which is it's nothing. The high spots correspond with each other, which means the crank is a tiny bit spread in this direction, but we're talking, it's like 0.005 of a millimeter, and I brought out the hammer, but I think we'll just be chasing our tail by trying to get this better than what it is. So that's not it. It's not the crank being ugad-dugad out of true. That is our problem, unfortunately. Maybe it is the runout in the seal. Maybe this is the cause of all that friction. So the crank is seemingly fine. This seal is not though. It's heavily worn already. There's almost score marks on the driver. I think there's too much slack. I made this too loose. So with the O-ring, that O-ring probably, that groove isn't perfectly concentric with everything else from runout in the lathe, and this is probably not concentric, like perfectly concentric to this hole, and there's some runout actually outside of spec in this, in relation to the taper, and so all of these things might stack up and create problems, which we could fix. But I'm wondering if it's a better idea to just delete this seal, and the only reason it's there is because I have the ignition trigger running here. So this is a combined rotary valve driver and ignition trigger wheel. What I could do is use this thing, which fits on the crank already, and it has lobes. Like this is a driver from some variator. I can grind off 3 of these lobes and And this is actually made to fit the splines on the crank. We can have this running on the inside of the drive pulley, like that, and have our ignition trigger sitting on that side. And in that way we're simplifying, deleting a seal, less friction, and we won't have to worry about misalignment issues here. And so maybe it's just like how bad this looks makes me think that this must have created a lot of heat, lots of heat. So maybe that's why it's running so hot. It's worth a shot deleting this and seeing how it runs, and then I can feel the cover and see if it's still getting that hot. But do I want to run this frying pan insert? The surface, that coating just seems to rub off, and I'm not sure how well it works as a low friction surface. I know it's a non-stick surface for frying stuff, but is it really a low friction surface for a rotary valve? We might go back to this cover, which has the Sartal aluminium alloy plate. Or do I make a completely new cover and source some cast iron? Steel on cast iron and an oil film is a tried and true solution. Think of cast iron cylinders and steel rings, piston rings. But this should be hard enough. This is what I run in the old engine with a carbon fiber valve. Another frying pan insert, this time cast iron. And we're deleting the hole here. We're actually making a cover for that hole. A 3mm end mill. I'm gonna try to bore some holes. This might end badly. I usually keep away from boring small holes and just center punch them and drill them in the drill press. But let's see here. I have it set to 1 degree per rotation of the head. It seems to work perfectly fine. And now at 500 millimeters per minute. We'll set to 1,000, which probably would have been too much. Well, maybe not, but this works just fine. I was gonna machine the backside of this, but looks like it turned heavily cupped. Let's release it from the outer rim and check what see what we've got here. Might be some tension in these frying pans. Looks like a bowl. Maybe this will become a failure after all. It's heavily dished, which is a bummer. I'm not sure if you're able to pick that up, but It's pretty much a bowl, and an inconsistent bowl. I think my only option now is to hand flatten this. Hooray! Well, there goes Friday. I'll try to give myself a little head start on the belt sander. See how kept it is. It will become too thin for bolts. We'll have to glue this one on also, like the two previous ones we've made. Lung protection might be a good idea here. I'll keep on keeping on until this is fairly flat on both sides, and then we'll hand sand it. I thought I had some spray glue, but well, turns out I haven't got any spray glue. This is annoying. It's so much thinner here than in the middle, and I haven't got any coarser. I'm talking with this on. I haven't got any coarser belts for that large belt grinder. And, so we'll have to maybe just get a different source of cast iron, something already flat and stress relieved. A cunning plan. Let's machine the new cover that's supposed to hold this. Then glue this on and then flatten it when mounted to the cover. And then that should solve our problems. It will become thin, but it doesn't need to be thick. Just as long as there's a cast iron surface there for the valve to ride against. Unfortunately, I haven't got the time to machine that cover now, so we'll have to do that Sunday night. So machine the cover and glue up the cast iron piece, and then machine that Monday morning. Assemble and test fire. And hopefully it works better now. See you next time.